Okay, I've got some voice. I'm going to re-record the disaster that was this morning. I'm not quite sure what happened, but some folks had some problems seeing, etc. So I'm going to dispense with a lot of the verbiage and come down here to Module 2. All right. Now, just as a quick overview, I'm going to show you, and I'm re-recording this right after class, so I'm going to make sure that that everybody's in good shape. Now, I had a couple of people who expressed some concerns that because they didn't have a microphone, that during class they couldn't ask me a question. Okay, I want to make sure that you know that you do have a chat function, and so if you have a question but you don't have a mic, you can use the chat function and it will come to me and it will show up, and unless it's really a private message, I'll just simply say, John asked me about X, Y, and Z. If you have a microphone, it's fine for you to just simply say, hey, I got a question. And we had some problems today with the screen, and I'm not sure what all happened. Apparently I hit something, or who knows. Hopefully this will go a lot better. And I'm going to make sure I'm recording this. Okay. Now, we're over here in module number 2, and I'm going to go through the assignments for the week. They're chapters 3 and 4. You have a quiz over them. And then you have the PAR Inc. That case is due, and it's over in pages 32 to 54 of your textbook. Okay, and here's vital source, and it starts on page 32, the PAR Inc. case. And then, as you could see, we also have the M&D chemicals case. All right. And that one is one where I'm going to ask you to manipulate some variables. Now, you'll notice that I have PAR Inc. is due the 7th at 5 p.m. I showed you the PAR Inc. key. All right. And I'm going to quickly go back over. You'll find PAR Inc. in the files section of Canvas. So let's go over to the files. And you'll see the Anderson Tech student Excel files. And you can download that zip file. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the PAR Inc. case, all right, is in chapter number 2. Now, when you open this up, when you open up the student files, you're going to see by chapter, and then you'll see Lingo files and Excel files. Lingo is a little baby optimizer that's provided by the publishers. It costs a couple $100 more for you to have it, so we just use Excel. We get the same results. We can do the same things, and often better. Now, I'm going to diminish my screen down and assume I'm still recording, okay? And I'm going to open up a copy of PAR that I had downloaded. And I went through the thing of always, when you use these files, download it to your desktop, rename it, open it up, and save it so that when you reload it, there's not an issue. And again, my apologies to those who were there, but you know, the post will be there, and it would be good for you to see it. You can take a look at it on Friday or whenever you want to. All right, now we're going to talk about, first of all, making sure that you have the access, that you have the Excel solver. So we would click on File, and then we go to Options, okay? And then we do Add-ins. And you'll see I have the analysis tool pack and the add-in up here in the active files, and then you have the inactive files. Okay? Now, that being said, you have if you don't have them up in the active, you need to click on them and add them into the active file. So you'll need to have solver, and you can get it in, you can use it in the lab. And if you're in the lab and you're viewing this, yeah, you can also call in on your phone and listen as we go through in the lab. Okay, our scheduling and things has been a little bit fraught. Number one, we didn't have class two Mondays on 2 weeks ago, and it's been a little bit fraught for a very simple reason that we didn't have class Monday. So it's been a little bit hectic, and yet today was a little bit of a disaster, and here I am in the middle of this, and I got the phone ringing off the wall. So what can I say? Nonetheless, if you look here, and I'm going to click on data, and then on solver, you're going to see the objective function. That is the answer I want. And I want to maximize that by changing these variable cells. Okay? Okay, now, and I'll go back here to the data. I'll put it in solver. Now I have my objective function is B18, and I'm going to change cells B16 through C16. That is the number of bags produced. And then I have a set of constraints. Now those constraints are in the number of hours used for those various operations, cutting and dyeing, sewing, finishing, etc. So now I'm going to solve this, and I can get 3 reports. And basically, if I want to hold down and control limits, I can get all 3. And they'll just simply generate a tab. This will give me the answers, but it also gives me a clue in terms of and we're going to cover this a lot more, but it kind of gives me, say, for example, for the standard bags, here's my objective coefficient, and an allowable increase, an allowable decrease. This is in terms of profit, and then in terms of the you can see it just kind of gives me a range. Same thing with the constraints. So that's all that's going on there. And then we have also a limits report and a sensitivity analysis. And I'll spend some more time going over that. But the main thing is this. When I open the solver, I'm working with identify the objective function, the variable cells, that is what will be changing, and that is the number of bags produced, and then my constraints. And I'm going to close this off for a minute and show you the constraints down here. And this is the left-hand side, and this is the right-hand side. And here's the condition. We have to use less than or equal to these figures. Okay? And that's what we're talking about. So you have a par inc there, and the par inc key. So that's what you want to upload where it says upload par inc here. And I will save that, and I'm going to go back up to the to Canvas. Now, let's go back to the modules for a moment. And you'll look and see that I've asked you to work on M&D chemicals. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I do this when I'm going to work on one of these. And here I'm going to manipulate some variables in the M&D chemicals file. And that's covered, that case is covered in pages 54 to 59. Okay, so I'm going to save it. All right, and then I'm going to go down to my desktop. I'm going to click on Anderson. The next student files, I'm going to look in chapter 2. And I'm going to get the Excel files, and I'm going to get M&D. All right. And once I've got M&D on my desktop, I'm going to rename it. I'm just going to call it something like M&D Harmon. Okay. And then I'm going to open it. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to save this as on my desktop, excuse me, M&D Harmon, and boom, save it. We're good. Okay. Now, I'm going to do something here that will help me keep in mind what I'm supposed to be doing in the case. So I'm going to click Insert. Okay. And I'm going to insert a text box. And then I'm going to paste in those directions so that I've got them with me, so I don't have to fumble between one to the other. Now we're going to do a little bit of playing around. But first of all, okay, we've got these data here, and we've got the gallons produced, etc. We've got the time available. All right. And I've got some processing time. I've got 600 hours of processing time. And I want to do cost minimization. Okay? So I'm going to click on Data, and I'm going to go to Solver. And you'll see that my objective function is B17. I want to minimize the total cost in order to have that indicated by changing cells B15 through C15. And that is how many gallons do I want to produce? Okay. And then I have my objective subject to the constraints. And you can see those, B20 through B21 is greater than or equal to D20 to D21, and then B22 is less than or equal to D22. Let's go down there and take a look at those for a moment. And there we are. And you can see the demand. So we're looking at a demand issue, the total production. And notice that we want the demand to be equal to or greater than 125. That's the right-hand side. And then the total production. And then the processing time less than or equal to 600 minutes, 600 hours, or whatever. So I'm going to click on Solver. Okay. And I'm going to click Solve. And it's going to give me the answer report. I'm okay there. And let's click at it first, and let's look at the answer. And I'll go back to the solution, and here it is. And I met my constraints. Okay? So we have this solution. Now, I'm going to ask you to do this. Find the left-hand side and the right-hand side if the processing time is increased by 19% per product. Okay? And the production costs, the processing time is increased 19% per product, and if the time available is decreased by 8%. So what we're going to do is we're going to decrease this, and I'm just going to make a little make it a quick little table here, and processing time. Okay, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to put in. So I'm going to do the processing time is 1.9 by 19%, so it's going to be 1.19. Oh, yikes. 0.19. Okay, that's the processing time. And so to get the processing time for product A, I'm going to take this and I'm going to change this. This is going to equal, and this will be times F9. Now I'm going to go ahead and make F9 an absolute cell function, use absolute referencing because I'm using it like a constant. Oh, whoops, it increased 19%. Let me go back here for a minute, folks. It's going to be 2 times, now put parentheses, 1 plus, there we go. Okay, and then for product 9, it's going to equal times, I'll put it parenthesis, and then 1 plus, okay? There we go. And now we've got the processing time, and now we're asked, okay, if the time available is decreased by 8%. So now I'm going to put time available over here. That's going to be times, and that'll be the time available. And down here I'm going to put 1 minus, we know it's 92%, so I'm just going to put 0.92. That will do the decrease. And so here we'll put $2, and processing increased, and the time available is decreased. That's get out of there. So I want the time available, and it's going to equal 600 times F12, and I'm going to go ahead and make that a absolute cell referencing. Boom. Okay, so notice what's happened now. The processing time needed for each product has been increased by 19%, and the time available has been decreased by 8%. Now what I've done here is I've simulated, we had an optimal solution, but what happens now if I have to change these variables? My prices go up, or let's say that it takes me longer to process these things, and then I have less time to accomplish it. And now I'm ready to go back up here to the data, to the solver. All right, and I've got the constraints. Let's check that we've got everything down here like we should. And we're going to see the changes that are created down here by changing these variables. And so I've got my objective functions, B17, and I've got the changing variables, and I've got the constraints, and I'm going to solve. Okay, Now what we find out is solver can't find a feasible solution based on what we've done here. We've increased the percent of time, the processing time was increased 19%. The time available was decreased by 8%. And there are our gallons produced, A and B, but they're not optimal. Okay? Now let's go down and look and see what happens. And we've got our LHS and our RHS, and they haven't changed any because we didn't change those constraints. We left them the same, but we do get different results. Okay, now I'm going to close this off, and we'll go back up to M&D Chemicals, and I have a key for you here. And when I said doing the workshops, okay, and then I'm going to open up the M&D key, and I'm going to download it. I'll put it in a folder, and we'll throw it over here on the desktop, and let's see what we got going on. Okay, now here I had changed it to 1.1%. I think it times 1.1, and really I should go ahead and just make this times 1.19 because that would be 19%. And the available time would be 600 times. I've got 1.9. I can just simplify it. I'm just going to put 600 times 0.92. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on data. And I'm going to solve. And solver can't find a feasible solution because there is none. Now you'll notice here, okay, that we got the changes that we wanted to see in the left-hand side and the right-hand side. There were no changes in the right-hand side, but there were in the left-hand side. So I'm going to go back here to the module, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and unpublish this. And I'll let you do some work on it using the M&D out of the student files. Now I'm going to go back down here again, and I'm going to find M&D Harmon. And I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to make this 2.38. All right. And this would be 1.19. I've increased it 19%. This will be equal times 0.92. I've got 552. And now I have my left-hand side. All right, and my constraints. And I would fill in my constraints. and fill in the total production and the processing time that fit those constraints, and then I'll run and I'll see my results over here. And so we'll want to see how much the left-hand side, the right hand, how much the left-hand and right-hand side change. What will change will be the left-hand side, the restraints. The right-hand side won't change. Okay. Now I also want to do this, and I can't reiterate enough. I apologize about the issue that we had this morning. I'm not sure what I did or what happened, but it's not, don't expect that to be the case. And let me repeat one more time. If you don't have a microphone, it doesn't mean you can't ask questions. All you have to do is send me a text question. You send me a text in the chat function, and I'll have it and I can answer your question for you. Okay, so there's no need to be all whacked out about that. Now, and again, we're going to see as they walk us through the text, maximization problem. This is par Inc. And this is the production time for each of those. And then we build a total profit contribution. And you can see this and read it faster than me. And again, we see the mathematical model that we're using to get our maximization subject to these constraints. Now they show us a graphical solution procedure and feasible regions. And we can, of course, put these into, and we look for slack variables in either there. We talked about that in some in the reports. And then any redundant constraints that we might have. And here's the solution using the par value. Now, the dual value term is also known as the shadow price, and that's how it's expressed in Excel. And the text will give you the definition of what that dual value does. It's like a measure of marginal utility of sorts. And we have the minimization problem with M&D chemicals. And they walk us through all that verbiage. And we look for surplus variables. And we'll talk about this some more, excuse me, as we get into next week. But basically what we're going to do is in M&D is we're going to manipulate the variables, all right? And then we'll see how this all looks. And so they give us that summary. And away we go. Now, we'll go back to M&D chemicals. Okay. And this is a minimization problem, and the text is going to walk us through each of those steps. And our constraints. and we get the optimal. And we have the RHS values for constraints 1, 2, and 3. And we try to find those surplus variables that we can. Okay, and they give us the production values that we need to have. Limited to 600 hours on processing time. And there are the constraints. And we go looking for any slack variables. Now, M&D is due, as will parent are due on Friday. Next Monday, God willing, we'll be able to meet live, and we'll go over M&D again and talk about what's there, and I'll show you the key and how we got what we got. Okay, folks, I'm going to stop the sharing, and I'm going to stop the recording.